Alrighty then. Um, I'm not going to scream Forge Gang or nothing like that. So, I am Imperator Forge. I also go by Forge Warhammer. I am the leader of Forge Gang, and this is going to be my response to Soberman, who made a critique, probably trying to emulate Drunken Surfer, um, trying to critique Mormon Shaggy about how in Mormonism he considers Jesus Christ to be like the engineer from Prometheus or Elysium, one of the Alien prequels. So I wanted to make a very short response. This is not going to be a very long video. So my response to that is how do you Soberman define what Christianity really is? How would you personally codify and give your personal parameters for how exactly this religion is supposed to work in the first place? Because I would imagine that your actual answer is going to be that you have to have like a fixed conviction or something like that. So I want to I want to make a quote by Friedrich Nietzsche, who says that a person who places the convictions of their religious faith above their own conscience lacks the personal integrity to verify the truth. Furthermore, a skeptic is more trustworthy because they allow themselves to doubt their own convictions. So, who is really more honest, or who is more honest about their own convictions? Is it the person who is dogmatically convinced that there are angels floating in the clouds, or is it the person who is willing to consider and to actually doubt these type of dogmas? That the earth is flat, that it's only 6,000 years old, that the sun revolves around the earth, things like that. Now, back to the point. Soberman was, because Shaggy is a Latter-day Saint or a Mormon, Soberman was trying to say that he thinks that Jesus Christ is a space alien, and therefore it invalidates his convictions. Well, I could make a retort to you, Soberman, by saying that you don't really know what your own religious or personal religion is, because I could just say that your view of Jesus Christ is basically Shinji from Neon Genesis Evangelion. So, Friedrich Nietzsche would own you, Soberman, in a debate. He would absolutely obliterate you, but I want to play this right fast. I want to play this. The thing about Western man, or the thing about the Occidental man, is that for the last 1,000 years, Northwest Europe was a high-trust society that was pitched around these very notions about Christianity being held in high trust. And then Marxism and wokeness came along. I'm not going to go into all the sophistication and the history about that. We're going to skip over that. But Marxism and wokeism came along, and it breaks down the notions of this high trust, because it breaks down the leadership principle or hierarchical principle that implicates for this high trust to be in the first place. That's the first case that I want to make against Soberman with his claim that Shaggy thinks that Jesus Christ was an extraterrestrial. Now, the second argument that I want to make is the utilization of the scientific principle, and I want to play this clip right fast. That
we could sort of get away with this and it would become a capstone example for the future for what to avoid. Because when Nietzsche wrote at the death of God at the end of the 19th century, and he said it would take like it would be in the century after next that this would occur, because at the end of the 19th century, Europe was still built around these underlying Christian moral codes. And
Okay, so Soberman, this is you, okay? You're basically, this is the type of Christianity that you and Drunken Surfer are advocating. Soberman, you and Drunken Surfer are not crusaders and you're not conquistadors. Your type of Christianity is built on a civic structure that is largely modeled on what Rudyard Lynch is talking about here. Now, I'm going to break down, or he is actually going to break down my second point against Soberman's critique of Shaggy.
So you look at most European societies were divine right monarchies with nobility. The population was something like 95+% Christian. And so you could look at that and think that Christianity was still strong. But what Nietzsche said was that Christianity had de facto already died because God had stopped being a moral player in people's universe. And so when people did things, they looked at the scientific results, they looked at theories like liberalism, and they were not using Christianity to mediate the elements of their life. It existed as an idea, but it wasn't the dominating, animating principle of the society. And one of the things my friend Balaji has said is that the 19th century was a society where God was the dominating moral variable, where when you did a social behavior, it was arbitrated by God in the Bible. The 20th century was the bureaucracy, and the 21st century is going to be the net.
Okay, so this is the kind of Christianity that Soberman, he also goes by Shrek Show, Alistair Mycroft, and Drunken Surfer and Ghost of Niccolo, and Chauncey Fatsack follow. They think that they are following these principles and guidelines, but all it is in fact an arbitration. They're not living a Christian lifestyle or an ascetic Christian Roman Catholic lifestyle like the monks did in the monasteries over 1,000 years ago in the Dark Ages. No, their concept of Christianity is not the Crusaders, and it is not, in fact, the conquistadors. It is this Christianity. They believe in the scientific method. They utilize the scientific method, and they utilize rationalism and even classic liberalism, which is basically the first stage of liberalism, even if they might reject wokeism, but they still follow these things. And it's just an ideal concept. It is an ideal concept on the part of Soberman because he follows the scientific method and he follows like classical liberalism, and to him, God is just an abstraction. It is a pure abstraction. He's not really following or being obedient to the actual lifestyle that the Bible advocates for, because guess what? When the New Testament was written, or when the Bible was written down, they did not have the scientific method. None of the people who wrote the Bible had the scientific method. Okay, Soberman and Drunken Surfer follow the scientific method and use it, and this is a good way to demonstrate how invalid their concepts of the Christian faith is.
Christian. And so you could look at that and think that Christianity was still strong. But what Nietzsche said was that Christianity had de facto already died because God had stopped being a moral player in people's universe. And so when people did things, they looked at the scientific results, they looked at theories like liberalism, and they were not using Christianity to mediate the elements of their life. It existed as an idea, but it wasn't the dominating, animating principle of the system.
Okay, so there you go. Okay, Yeah, God might exist as an ideal to you, Soberman, but you're not using it. It is not, it is an abstract principle. Okay? The fact is that, Soberman, you follow the scientific method and you believe in the principles of liberalism and you follow the things here. You're not using God as a mediator. You don't see God as a mediator between yourself and him. In the 16th century, like in the Tudor period, you would have been literally put on the stake for that. Yeah, you would have been put on the stake for that in Minecraft, of course. But my point is that even if Mormon Shaggy does believe that Jesus Christ is some kind of an alien who came to Earth millions of years ago and used progenesis, or kind of used some kind of a genetic method or material to put intelligence and cognizance into single cell organisms, or that Jesus was an alien or an extraterrestrial, like from the Predator Alien series, or from the prequels Elysium and Prometheus. Even if Shaggy did believe that, your principles and your ideas of what you think that God is no better. You have nothing at all to counter all that you critique. You make a critique, but you don't present a sufficiently well-premised argument to debunk anything in regards to Kolob or to Mormonism. I am not defending Mormonism. I am not defending your critique. I'm just saying that you're wrong, and this was my response to that. So, a person who places the convictions of their religious faith above their own conscience lacks the personal integrity to verify the truth. Furthermore, a skeptic is more trustworthy because they allow themselves to doubt their own convictions. Okay? Dying for your religious faith, and even being persecuted and killed for your religious faith, doesn't prove that it's true. Do not let yourself be deceived. Great intellects are skeptical. Zarathustra is a skeptic. The strength, the freedom which proceed from intellectual power, from a superabundance of intellectual power, manifest themselves as skepticism. Men of fixed convictions do not count when it comes to determining what is fundamental in values and lack of values. Men of convictions are prisoners. They do not see far enough. They do not see what is below them, whereas a man who would talk to any purpose about value and non-value must be able to see 500 convictions beneath them and behind him. A mind that aspires to great things and that wields the means thereto is necessarily skeptical. Freedom from any sort of conviction belongs to strength and to an independent point of view. The grand passion which is at once the foundation and the power of a skeptic's existence, and is both more enlightened and more despotic than he is himself, drafts the whole of his intellect into its service. It makes him unscrupulous. It gives him courage to employ unholy means under certain circumstances. It does to begrudge him even convictions. Conviction has a means. One may achieve a good deal by means of a conviction. A grand passion makes use of and uses up convictions. It does not yield to them. It knows itself to be sovereign. On the contrary, the need of faith, of something unconditioned by yea or nay, of Carlylism, if I may be allowed the word, is a need of weakness. The man of faith, the believer of any sort, is necessarily a dependent man. Such a man cannot posit himself as a goal, nor can he find goals within himself. The believer does not belong to himself. He can only be a means to an end. He must be used up. He needs someone to use him up. His instinct gives the highest honors to an ethic of self-effacement. He is prompted to embrace it by everything: his prudence, his experience, his vanity. Every sort of faith is in itself an evidence of self-effacement, of self-estrangement. When one reflects how necessarily it is to be the great majority, that there be regulations to restrain them from without and hold them fast, and to what extent control, or in a higher sense, slavery, is the one and only condition which makes for the well-being of the weak-willed man, and especially women. Then one at once understands conviction and faith. To the man with convictions, they are his backbone. To avoid seeing many things, to be impartial about nothing, to be a party man through and through, to estimate all values strictly and infallibly, these are conditions necessary to the existence of such a man. But by the same token, they are antagonist of the truthful man of the truth. The believer is not free to answer the question, true or not true, according to the dictates of his own conscience. Integrity on this point would work his own downfall. The pathological limitations of his vision turned the man of convictions into a fanatic. Savonarola, Luther, Rousseau, Robespierre, Saint-Simon, these types stand in opposition to the strong, emancipated spirit. But the grandiose attitudes of these sick intellects, these intellectual epileptics, are of influence upon the great masses. Fanatics are picturesque, and mankind prefers observing poses to listening to reasons. So, Soberman, can you actually really define what your own personal faith or your own personal experiences are in regards to this? Because as far as I can see, Soberman, you call yourself a deist. How is you believing in God in simply just being a foreign clockmaker who designed the universe and left his hands off of creation to let it run according to its own whims? How is that any better from anything that Shaggy believes? Anyways, Beat Soup says, hi, I didn't realize that Shrek Show was Soberman. What's going on with Rudyard's chest? Alright, so I'm Imperator of Forge, and this is my response to Soberman's critique on Mormon Shaggy believing that Jesus Christ is basically the engineer from Elysium or Prometheus. Thank you so much, and have a good day.